He wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this. Not with everything already crumbling around him before a single regular season snap is even taken. But here we are, and the clock is running out.
Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson going head-to-head for QB1. Check it out yourself.
Home, away from home, Cleveland, that both Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders have looked really good in practice. Like, both of them are working really hard to get a feel for what this offense is and, more importantly, what the coaches want. Their new head coach, Todd Monken, first-time head coach, but he is a guy who is very direct and very clear about what he wants. You can hear his voice booming at practice, telling the QBs, telling the players what they want. Guys, I had to write this down because checking in with Cleveland, I was told Deshaun looks fresh and healthy, kind of like back in his Houston days.
$230 million guaranteed. That's not a contract. That's a statement. That's the Cleveland Browns betting their entire future, their fans, their front office, their identity on one man's arm. And right now, that bet looks like it might be the most dangerous gamble in NFL history, because while Deshaun Watson spent nearly 2 full seasons watching from the sideline, surgeries, suspensions, silence, the league kept moving, the game kept evolving, and a rookie quarterback from Colorado just walked into Browns camp and started turning heads in ways nobody was prepared for. His name is Shedeur Sanders, and he is not waiting his turn.
But what they've done this offseason in terms of, supporting the quarterback position, revamping the offensive line, revamping the skill group, whoever ultimately wins this job, I think is going to be set up for success. My thing is if it's this close leaving the spring, if Deshaun hasn't been able to gain a clear advantage through the spring against a guy that's in his second year in the NFL, then maybe you should just let Shedeur Sanders rock out here. That's how I look at it. If it's close between these two dudes, if it's close between the both of them, why is the benefit of the doubt not going to Shedeur Sanders? And I get it. You want to see him in training camp. You want to see him play the preseason. I'm wondering what made his tone switch so quickly, because that's why the question was ultimately asked today. He said ahead of the start of OTAs that he planned on naming the starter at the end of the spring going into camp. Well, the end of the spring is this week for them, and he just told you that they're nowhere near close to naming a starting quarterback here. If your team Shedeur Sanders here, I think it's definitely an arrow up. If your team Deshaun Watson, which I don't know how you could be team Deshaun Watson in this situation, I think it's a red flag. For him not to be able to clearly separate himself from Shedeur during this period, I think it says a lot about where Deshaun is. More importantly, I think it says more about where Shedeur is. If Shedeur Sanders didn't play with a name on the back of his jersey, you all pick up what I'm putting down here. If Shedeur Sanders didn't play with a name on the back of his jersey and he was evaluated coming out of college simply based off of the tape, he would have been a first-round pick.
So, of course, now my interest is piqued because that's easy to say in June. But if he's the guy who can be the quarterback, QB1, you have to see it not just in September, but beyond. But that said, Shedeur has also impressed, and he is getting, the more he works, the more he gets. And so right now, we're still a little ways away from knowing who will be QB1.
I mean, and this is a team that invested $230 million guaranteed
just a little bit, Hannah, yes.
Deshaun Watson.
Just a little bit.
Are we going to get any return on that investment? Tim, what do they need to see from Watson for him to regain that starting spot?
Let's rewind, because to understand what's happening in Cleveland right now, you have to understand what Deshaun Watson used to be. There was a moment not that long ago when Watson was untouchable, when he was in Houston lighting up defenses, making throws that had coaches rewinding film at 2 a.m. just trying to figure out how he did it. He was mobile, he was dangerous, he was accurate under pressure. Multiple analysts had him in the top 5 quarterbacks in football. The Texans didn't just have a franchise QB, they had a superstar. And then, everything collapsed. Legal battles, suspension, silence. By the time he came back in a Browns uniform, the offense around him was already broken. The timing was off, the rhythm was gone. He tore his Achilles, he missed games, he missed entire seasons. The $230 million contract that was supposed to signal a new era in Cleveland became the punchline of an entire league. But here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. What if that's just who Deshaun Watson is now? Camp opened. The cameras were rolling. Browns fans were cautiously hopeful. Not excited, not optimistic, just cautiously, painfully hopeful. The kind of hope that comes from years of heartbreak. The kind of hope that wears armor. And what did the reporters see? Watson looked fresh, healthy. Reports coming out of Cleveland said he looked like a version of himself from his Houston days. Loose, sharp, moving well. New head coach Todd Monken was booming across the practice field, demanding precision, demanding urgency. And Watson was there. He was working. But so was Shedeur Sanders. And Shedeur wasn't just working, he was impressing. Every rep, every drill, every throw. Coaches noticed, reporters noticed, and most importantly, teammates noticed. Shedeur has this calm confidence that you can't fake. It doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from a kid who grew up watching his father coach legends, who studied the game before he could drive, who was born into football the way some kids are born into music. He doesn't see this as a competition. That's what he told the media straight up. I'm just focused on showing up every day and being the best player and teammate I can be. Simple, quiet, dangerous. Because in the NFL, the guys who say the least very often do the most.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you'd have to look close to what he was. Look, I don't know that he'll ever be. In fact, he won't be. He's never going to be what he once was. Look, when in Houston, there was a period there where he was probably one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the game. He's never going to get back to that point where he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football. But if he can get back to something similar to what he was, then I think he ends up being the starter there. I mean, that's what I think. So, look, I think it's unlikely. He's had a long time away from the game, playing the hardest position in sports, so it's unlikely that is going to happen. At the same time, he's competing against a second-year, very unproven player, and so I do think the starting quarterback job for Week 1 in Cleveland is wide open between both guys. If Deshaun is healthy enough to legitimately compete for it, then I think he has a legitimate shot to win it and be the Week 1 starter, and quite frankly, probably way better than just a bridge quarterback.
And here's where it gets uncomfortable for Cleveland. Todd Monken hasn't named a starter. He's not ready to. And that silence is deafening. Because when you have a $230 million quarterback on your roster, you don't stay silent about the starting job unless you have a reason to stay silent. People inside the league are watching this. Fans are watching this. And the question that's hanging over every single Browns practice right now is brutally simple. Can Deshaun Watson ever actually be that guy again? The honest answer from analysts, from people who've watched every snap of his career, is hard to hear. He's probably never going to be what he once was. The peak version of Deshaun Watson, the top 5 QB, the guy making impossible throws in Houston, that player may be gone. Not because of character, not because of effort, but because of time, because of injuries, because this is the hardest position in professional sports, and you don't just walk back in after years on the sideline and pick up exactly where you left off. The game is too fast. The window is too small. The margin for error is 0. But here's the twist that makes this whole thing electric. He's not competing against Patrick Mahomes. He's not competing against Josh Allen. He's competing against a second-year quarterback who has never started a regular season NFL game. And if Watson can't beat out Shedeur Sanders for the Week 1 starting spot in front of the entire country, in front of the same fans who watched Cleveland hand him $250 million, the conversation doesn't just become uncomfortable, it becomes historic. Monken has built something real around this quarterback battle. 2 offensive linemen drafted, 2 wide receivers, weapons everywhere. The roster is set up to make whoever takes that field look good. Running back depth, route runners, a genuine attempt to give the quarterback every possible advantage. Cleveland's message to both of these men is clear. Prove it now, or someone else will. And Shedeur Sanders, he's been processing everything faster than anyone expected. Every session, every walkthrough, every audible, he's getting it. And the more he gets it, the more dangerous this competition becomes. There's a very real version of this story where Deshaun Watson comes back, truly comes back, and silences every doubt, where the health holds, the timing clicks, and something clicks in that offense that reminds everyone why Cleveland paid him what they paid him. That version exists. It's possible. But there's another version. The version where August arrives, the pads go on, the hits get real, and the gap between where Watson is and where this offense needs him to be becomes impossible to ignore. That version is possible too. And right now, in June, nobody, not the coaches, not the front office, not the analysts, can tell you with any confidence which version is coming. What we know is this: Shedeur Sanders is young, hungry, and proving every day that he belongs. And Deshaun Watson, once one of the most electrifying quarterbacks this league has ever seen, is running out of time to remind the world who he used to be. The pads go on in August, the games count in September, and Cleveland is holding its breath. Whatever happens next in that quarterback room won't just define a season, it might define the rest of both of their careers.